look, I'm really happy, assuming that deal is all done, which is what everyone is saying it is. I think he's a fantastic manager. I mean, his accomplishments literally speak for himself. Premier League winner with Chelsea, Scudetto winner with Inter Milan. So I think Spurs are even fortunate to be considered in the same breath as any of these clubs. But, you know, if it's the right fit, I don't know, because we've all seen this happen before with Daniel Levy, appoints a big name manager like he did with Jose Mourinho. But with these big name managers comes a responsibility to back the manager and give them sufficient enough backing in order for them to go and do what we know that they can do. So we've seen it with Conte at Inter, at Chelsea. You know, he can be quite volatile, and if it doesn't work, then they do tend to have quite a sour fallout. But look, I'm really hopeful that it's going to go well. I just hope for once that, you know, this board, it really is the last chance for them to turn this around and get any favour back within the Spurs fans, because at the moment it is just not looking good for them in terms of support. So having Conte come in, who arguably they should have brought in the summer when they were looking at him the first time, instead of wasting another 4 months with another manager. I think we've spent more money on sacking managers than we have on actually signing, you know, a striker in the last 10 years. So for me, I'm really excited about it. I just hope it works, and I hope they back him. And these players that are here as well, I feel like they never really bought into what Nuno was kind of selling. It didn't look like he ever had any type of control over that dressing room. So someone like Conte coming in, they have to really start looking at themselves, because he won't take anyone as a prisoner, and if they're not pulling their weight, they'll know about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, back to Conte and the decision to give him the job and just 18 months. So, yeah, are Spurs fans at the point where they just want a trophy, or were you hoping to see somebody come in, rebuild? We were talking to Harriet about the job that Jurgen Klopp's done. It wasn't an overnight success, but it has brought plenty of success.
Well, I guess you could say we had the rebuild as such under Pochettino, or a build of some kind. We had the project. Spurs are again at a very big point where they have to kind of rebuild again. But this, for me, when you look at Antonio Conte and the length of the contract is 18 months, I think it's with an option of an extra year on top. That's not a long-term project. And it was the same thing when he tried to hire Mourinho and go down that route. These are not managers that are going to be there for a long time. They're here to get the job done. So if they're here to get the job done in a short amount of time, then you have to give them the tools that they're going to need to be able to do that in that short period of time. I think Spurs have needed a rebuild for a good 3-4 seasons now, if not more, going back to when we were still at Wembley. So whether or not he's going to be here past, you know, the 18-month mark, I don't know. But I think it's a massive moment for Spurs to try and win silverware, whether that be in the Europa Conference League. I'm not a huge fan of the competition, to be honest with you. But again, I guess we'll take I take whatever trophy we can get at this point, because something has to change. And I think honestly, if Antonio Conte can't do it and win something with Tottenham, even though this team is not particularly great, there are still some world-class players in there. But I think if he can't change the mentality of this club, which it needs to do from the top down to the bottom, I genuinely have no idea who would be able to do that.
Harriet, we talked in the first part, didn't we, about Jurgen Klopp doing just that, changing the whole mentality of the place. Really interesting quotes from Cesc Fabregas. He said Conte helped him take his game to a place he didn't think it could go. You mentioned Lukaku making him world class. I don't know whether you saw the Thierry Henry interview that he did with Conte. He says, you know, you have to go out and perform in training. And he says, anybody who doesn't have good behaviour, he said, I prefer to kill them. I mean, that says everything you need to know about how he's going to go about his job, doesn't it, Harriet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned Klopp there, and when he came in, there was that famous quote that he says he wants to change fans from doubters to believers, and I think that Tottenham will have to sort of buy into a similar mentality. From the players' perspective, I think it's really interesting dynamic when you have sort of these bigger stars like Harry Kane coming in, and then you're going to sort of contribute that with a manager like Conte, who is going to be very physically demanding, but also mentally demanding, and is going to want to have all the players on his side. I think he said many times that if you don't have the control of the dressing room, then it just turns into chaos. And I think he'll want to have total control of that dressing room at all times. And I think what's really interesting, if you look over his managerial career, is even when he's had sort of fallouts at clubs or things haven't been going the way he wanted them to, he's still managed to maintain control of that dressing room. So I think his top priority when he gets into the Tottenham Hotspur, changing room is going to have to be getting them on side and getting them to believe in what he wants to do. And I think for them to do that, they have to have a very shared and a very clear identity. And for me, that's something that they've been lacking. But at the same time, from a Tottenham perspective, I do just think they need to have a bit of patience and take a bit of time, because if we were all expecting Klopp to achieve so much in his first year, he would have been sacked, and that would have been the biggest mistake we could have ever made. So I think there's no denying that. Obviously, he did that at Chelsea, and I think the expectations will be that he can do similar, but it might take a little bit more time. And I wonder if they're willing to let that go and have that sort of a couple of seasons of him putting in the groundwork before they win anything.
Abbi, what would you be happy with come May this season for Tottenham, where they finish and such like? And also, what about the following May? What does he need to do in this 18 months?
I mean, based on this, May, I know we are really early on in the season, but when I look at this squad, I think we're so far away from being a top 4 side. So, for me, the way we're playing is, mid-table at best at the moment. So if we can turn that round and try and finish, kind of, I guess, anything from where we were last year. I mean, 7th upwards, I'd be very happy with, because I haven't seen anything from us this season that warrants a place any higher. But look, he's going to come in, he's going to put his ethos and ideas into that squad. And I think he's got he's got a very long road ahead of him. So if he can turn this squad around, of course, he's got the January transfer window as well. I know that lots of people say you can't get good business done in January, but I think that we will need to do something, because we look at, if we're going to fight across all competitions, including that Europa Conference League, we don't have another striker to Harry Kane. We only have Dane Scarlett. The guy's 17 years old. He's too young to be playing in that. So that's a big area Spurs are going to need to also add to. But for me, if we can finish anywhere from 7th upwards, I'd be very happy, because the way it's going at the moment, we were looking as if we were going to be relegated playing in that way.